My son texted me saying we need space from you, so please do not reach out anymore at all. I sat there in my penthouse staring at the message for a long time. Then I saw that his wife had heart reacted to the text. That little red heart icon was the final nail in the coffin. I simply typed, "Okay." Then I logged into my banking app and blocked them along with their access to the family fortune they had been living off for a decade. The next morning, I woke up to 109 missed calls. Before I tell you how I brought my own family to their knees, let me know which city you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been taken for granted by the people you sacrificed everything for. Being Richard Caldwell meant something in Chicago. It meant logistics, shipping empires, and a handshake that was worth millions. But inside my 6,000 square foot apartment on the 45th floor, it meant absolutely nothing. It was my 68th birthday. The silence in the room was so heavy it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I had spent the entire day checking my phone, convincing myself that the silence was just a delay. Maybe they were planning a surprise party. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe my phone reception was bad. I actually walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the city lights shimmering below just to see if the signal bars would go up. They were full. The problem was not the technology. The problem was the people I loved. I walked back to the kitchen island, where a bottle of 50-year-old scotch sat unopened. I had bought it for myself. I poured a glass, the amber liquid swirling against the crystal, and sat down on the leather stool. The leather was cold. Everything in this house was cold. I looked at the clock. It was 11:30 at night. The day was almost over. My birthday was almost over. I decided to break the rule. I decided to be the one to reach out. I opened the family group chat. The last message was from me, sent 2 weeks ago, asking if anyone wanted to come over for dinner. No one had replied. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed a simple message. "Happy birthday to me. Hope you are all doing well in Aspen." I pressed send. The status changed to delivered immediately. Then it changed to read. I waited. 1 minute passed, then 2. I saw the 3 little dots appear indicating someone was typing. My heart actually sped up. A pathetic reaction for a man who used to negotiate with union leaders and hostile board members without breaking a sweat. The dots disappeared. Then they appeared again. Finally, the phone buzzed. It was a message from Brandon, my only son, my pride and joy. The boy I had sent to the best private schools, whose failures I had cushioned with cash, whose lifestyle I funded entirely. The text read, "We are trying to enjoy our vacation here. You making us feel guilty is really killing the vibe. We need space from you. Please do not reach out anymore at all." I stared at the screen. I read it once. I read it twice. I read it until the words blurred together. We need space. The phrase echoed in the empty penthouse. Then a second notification popped up. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, had reacted to the message. She did not send a text. She did not offer an apology. She simply tapped the heart icon on her husband's cruel message. A heart. As if hurting me was something to love. As if discarding the man who paid for the ski lodge they were sleeping in was a joke. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was not a scream. It was the quiet click of a lock turning. The father in me, the one who made excuses for them, who said they were just young and busy, that man died in that chair. In his place, the CEO returned, the cold, calculating businessman who knew exactly what to do when an asset became a liability. I finished my scotch in one swallow. The burn in my throat was grounding. I stood up and walked to my office. I did not turn on the main lights. The glow of the city was enough. I sat down at my mahogany desk and opened my MacBook Pro. The screen illuminated my face. I could see my own reflection in the dark glass before the login screen appeared. I looked old, but I looked dangerous. I navigated to the Chase private client portal. The Face ID login chimed softly. The dashboard loaded, displaying numbers that most people would only dream of. I scrolled past my primary accounts to the sub-accounts. There they were. The accounts labeled Brandon Personal Vanessa Daily, and the joint account labeled Household Expenses. I clicked on the transaction history for the last month. It was a hemorrhage of money. A $4,000 dinner in Aspen last night. A purchase at a luxury ski boutique for $12,000 this morning. A spa package for $5,000 an hour ago. They were living like a royalty on a king's dime, while the king sat alone on his birthday. I did not feel anger anymore. I felt precision. I selected the Brandon personal account. I moved the cursor to the Settings tab. My finger hovered over the option that said Suspend Account. I clicked it. A pop-up asked for confirmation. Are you sure you want to suspend this account? All associated cards will be declined. I clicked Yes. The status changed from active to suspended in red letters. I did the same for Vanessa's account, then the joint account. I moved to the American Express portal next. This was the big one. The Centurion card, the black card, has no limit. It is a symbol of ultimate freedom. I had given Brandon a supplementary card 5 years ago, thinking he would use it for emergencies or business investments. Instead, he used it to buy his way into a social circle that despised him. I pulled up the card management screen. I saw a pending charge from 30 minutes ago. Champagne service at the club. $3,000. They were celebrating. They were toasting to their freedom, to the space they demanded from me. I selected the supplementary card. I chose the option Report Lost or Stolen. Then I selected Cancel Card immediately. The screen refreshed. Card canceled. But I was not done. I opened the Tesla mobile app. I had bought Brandon a Model X for his 30th birthday. The car was registered under my company's fleet for tax purposes, which meant I had administrative control. I saw the car's location. It was parked at the Resort Valet in Aspen. I tapped on the controls. I enabled valet mode. Then I set the speed limit to 10 miles per hour. Then I changed the digital key access, revoking Brandon's phone as an authorized key. The next time he tried to unlock that car, it would be nothing more than a 6-figure paperweight. Finally, I sent an email to my family office manager, ensuring she would see it first thing in the morning. The subject line was clear. Halt all scheduled transfers. The body of the email was simple. Effective immediately, stop the monthly allowance transfers to Brandon Caldwell. Cancel the health insurance policy I pay for Vanessa, and put a hold on the tuition payments for next semester until further notice. I hit send. The sound of the email swooshing away was the most satisfying sound I had heard all year. I closed the laptop. I sat there in the dark for another moment, listening to the silence. It felt different now. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of a boardroom after a hostile takeover. I had given them what they wanted. I had given them space. Total, absolute, expensive space. I went to bed, and for the first time in years, I slept like a baby. The sun hit my face at 7 a.m. Sharp. I have always been an early riser. The automated blinds rose slowly, revealing a crisp, clear Chicago morning. The lake was a sheet of blue steel. I walked to the kitchen and pressed the button on the espresso machine. The grinder whirred to life, the smell of freshly ground beans filling the air. It was a smell of routine, of order. I felt calm. I felt light. Then I looked at my phone sitting on the counter where I had left it charging. The screen was lighting up. It went dark, then lit up again instantly. It was vibrating so hard, it was slowly moving across the marble countertop. I picked it up. The notification center was a solid wall of banners. 109 missed calls, 84 text messages. The first missed call was at 6:15 a.m. probably right when they tried to check out of the hotel. The first text message from Brandon was sent at 6:20. It read, "Dad, there is something wrong with the Amex. It got declined at the hotel. Can you call the bank? It must be a fraud alert." He sounded so innocent, so sure that his safety net was just tangled, not cut. I scrolled down. 6:30 a.m. Another text. "Dad, the Chase debit cards are not working either. This is embarrassing. People are staring. Call me back." 7 a.m. The tone shifted. "Dad, pick up the phone. We cannot get our car out of valet. The app says access denied." What is going on? 7:15 a.m. Panic setting in. Vanessa is crying. They are threatening to call the police if we do not pay the bill. Dad, this is not funny. Pick up. 7:30 a.m. The anger, the entitlement. You did this. I know you did this. You are a sick old man. Turn the cards back on right now. Who does this to their own family? I took a sip of my espresso. It was perfect. Rich dark with just the right amount of crema on top. I imagined the scene in the hotel lobby in Aspen. The marble floors, the judgmental looks of the staff, the pile of luggage they could not move because they could not pay the valet. Brandon sweating in his designer jacket trying to explain to a manager that he was good for it. Vanessa mascara running, realizing that her Instagram story about a luxury getaway was about to have a very ugly ending. My phone rang again in my hand. It was Brandon. I watched the name flash on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but I did not decline it. I just let it ring. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I opened the messaging app. I typed a reply to his last text, the one where he called me a sick old man. I wrote, "I received your request for space. I am respecting your boundaries. Do not contact me until you have figured out how to pay for your own vacation." I hit send. Then I went into settings and enabled Do Not Disturb. I took my coffee and walked out onto the balcony. The wind was cold, but the sun was warm. It was going to be a beautiful day. I had a feeling that my lawyer Leonard Roth would be hearing from them soon, and I needed to be ready. Because the war had just begun. I watched the flight tracker on my iPad with a glass of sparkling water in hand. It was fascinating to see how slowly a commercial airliner moves when you are not flying private. Flight A249 from Denver to Chicago O'Hare. Economy class. I knew it was economy because I had received a notification from the pawn shop owner in Aspen, an old acquaintance of mine. He told me a young man matching Brandon's description had frantically sold a Rolex Submariner for half its value just to buy 2 last-minute tickets home. That watch was a graduation gift I gave him. Seeing him trade a $20,000 timepiece for a middle seat near the lavatory gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. It was their first lesson in the exchange rate of desperation. I did not send a car to pick them up. Usually my driver Thomas would be waiting at the gate with a sign and chilled water. Today, Thomas was polishing the Rolls-Royce in the garage, and my son and his wife were navigating the chaos of the taxi queue at O'Hare during rush hour. I imagined Vanessa standing on the curb, her limited edition Louis Vuitton luggage getting splashed by the slushy gray mud that Chicago is famous for in the winter. She would be shivering in her thin designer coat, realizing that fashion offers zero protection against the cold reality of poverty. It took them 2 hours to get from the airport to my building. I tracked their progress via the location sharing Brandon had forgotten to turn off on his phone. When the yellow cab finally pulled up to the curb of the Caldwell Tower, I switched the input on my living room television to the lobby security cameras. It was better than any reality show I had ever funded. The cab driver got out looking furious. I could see him shouting and pointing at the meter. Brandon was patting his pockets, looking pale. He tried one credit card. The driver shook his head. He tried another. The driver threw his hands up. Vanessa was sitting in the back seat, refusing to make eye contact, probably scrolling through her phone to delete the photos of their luxury trip before anyone asked why they were home early. Eventually, I saw Brandon pull a crumpled wad of cash from his pocket, the remnants of the watch money, and hand it over. He didn't tip. The driver threw their heavy bags onto the wet pavement and sped off, leaving them standing in the exhaust fumes. They looked defeated. Their clothes were wrinkled from the flight. Brandon's hair, usually styled to perfection, was a mess. Vanessa looked like a raccoon, her mascara smudged from what I assumed were tears of rage, not sorrow. They gathered their bags, struggling with the weight. They had never carried their own luggage in their lives. Bellboys did that. Porters did that. I did that metaphorically for 30 years. Today, they carried their own baggage. They approached the revolving glass doors. I leaned forward. This was the moment. I had briefed James, the head of security, earlier that morning. James was a good man, a former Marine who worked double shifts to put his daughter through college. Vanessa had once called him a peasant because he didn't open the door fast enough for her poodle. I knew James would enjoy this. I saw Brandon reach for the door handle, expecting the automatic sensor to welcome him. Nothing happened. He waved his hand. Still nothing. He tried to swipe his key fob on the reader. The little light on the panel turned a harsh, unforgiving red. He swiped again. Red. He slammed his hand against the glass. James stepped out from behind the marble concierge desk. He walked slowly, his posture impeccable. He did not rush to open the door. He stood on the other side of the glass, arms crossed. Brandon shouted something. I could not hear the audio through the camera, but I could read his lips. Open the door, James. Or, do you know who I am, Ma? Nodded. He knew exactly who Brandon was. He pressed the intercom button. I turned up the volume on my system to hear the exchange. Mr. Caldwell James said, his voice calm and professional. Your access to this building has been revoked by the owner of the penthouse. Open this door right now or I will have you fired. Vanessa screamed, pushing past Brandon to press her face against the glass. I live here. My clothes are upstairs. My jewelry is upstairs. Actually, James replied, checking a clipboard, according to the building registry. The penthouse belongs to Mr. Richard Caldwell. Your names were removed from the authorized guest list at 8 a.m. this morning. The owner has stated that since you requested space, he has secured the perimeter to ensure you get as much space as possible. You are lying, Brandon yelled. My father would never do this. Call him. Call him right now. James looked at the camera, knowing I was watching. Mr. Caldwell is currently in a meeting and asked not to be disturbed. He left a message, though. He said if you are looking for accommodation, the Motel 6 on the highway has vacancies. Vanessa looked like she was going to explode. She kicked the glass door with her Italian leather boot. It was a pathetic, hollow thud. Passers-by on the street were starting to stop and look. A homeless man pushing a cart paused to watch the rich couple having a meltdown. The irony was poetic. I decided it was time to make an appearance. Not to let them in, but to finalize the boundary. I put on my suit jacket. I did not wear a tie. I wanted to look relaxed, like a man enjoying his retirement. I took the private elevator down to the lobby. The ride took 40 seconds. 40 seconds to compose myself. 40 seconds to bury the father who wanted to hug his son and resurrect the man who needed to teach him a lesson. When the elevator doors opened, the sound of Vanessa's screeching filled the lobby. This is illegal. You cannot lock us out. I have rights. I walked across the polished marble floor. The click of my shoes echoed. James saw me and immediately stood at attention. He unlocked the side door, but he stood in the doorway blocking the path. Dad Brandon saw me. His face crumpled. He looked 5 years old again, terrified after breaking a vase. Dad, tell this idiot to let us in. This is insane. We have been traveling all day. We are exhausted. I stopped 5 feet away from the door. The cold air from the street rushed in, but I didn't flinch. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 32 years old, wearing a jacket that cost more than James's car, and he was whining like a toddler. I thought you needed space, Brandon, I said softly. Stop it, Dad, Brandon snapped, trying to regain some dignity. You made your point. You cut the cards. You embarrassed us at the hotel. We had to sell my watch. Do you know how humiliating that was? Now let us in. We need to shower. You sold the watch, I asked. The submariner, yes. Because you stranded us, that watch was worth $20,000, I said. A flight home cost $400. Where's the rest of the money, Brandon? He froze. He glanced at Vanessa. She looked away. I bet you flew economy, didn't you? I continued. So you should have at least $18,000 in cash in your pocket. Unless, of course, you spent it on something else before you left. Maybe to pay off a tab. Or maybe you just threw it away like you throw away everything I give you. It doesn't matter, Vanessa interjected, stepping in front of Brandon. Open this door, Richard. By law, we have established residency here. You have to give us 30 days' notice before you kick us out. I know my rights. I watched a video on TikTok about tenant laws. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. That is true for tenants, Vanessa. Tenants pay rent. Tenants have a lease. You are guests, and guests can be asked to leave at any moment, especially guests who insult the host. Please, Dad. Brandon's voice cracked. He was crying now. Just let us up. We can talk about this upstairs. I am sorry about the text. Okay, I am sorry. Just open the door. I looked at James. He was waiting for my command. If I nodded, he would step aside. If I nodded, they would come and shower order room service on my tab, and within 2 days they would be back to ignoring me. The apology was not real. It was a transaction. He was paying me with words to buy back his comfort. I checked my watch. I have a dinner reservation, I lied, and you two are blocking the exit. I turned to James. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell off the property. If they refuse to leave, call the police and report them for trespassing. Dad, no. Brandon reached out, trying to grab my arm through the open door, but James blocked him effortlessly. I turned my back on them. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Walking away from your child when they are crying requires a strength that tears you apart from the inside. But I kept walking. I pressed the elevator button. You will regret this, Vanessa screamed as James began to push them back toward the street. You will die alone, you miserable old man. The elevator doors closed, cutting off her voice. I was alone in the mirrored box. I looked at my reflection. I did not look miserable. I looked like a man who had just cut off a gangrenous limb to save the body. I took out my phone and called my lawyer, Leonard. Leonard, I said as the elevator rose back to the penthouse. They are back. Initiate phase 2. I want an audit of every cent they have spent in the last 5 years. And Leonard, get the eviction notice ready for the court. They mentioned tenant rights. Let's show them what a real landlord looks like. I allowed them upstairs for exactly 30 minutes, not because my resolve had crumbled, and not because Brandon's tears at the front door had moved me. I let them in because I am a businessman, and in business you never terminate a partnership without a final exit interview. You lay out the data, you show the cause and effect, you make sure there is absolutely no ambiguity about why the contract is being voided. They walked into the penthouse looking like wet, stray dogs. Brandon was shivering, his cashmere sweater damp from the Chicago sleet. Vanessa marched in with her chin high, dragging her luggage across my hardwood floors, the wheels leaving muddy streaks that she pretended not to notice. She dropped her bag in the middle of the hallway, and walked straight to the liquor cabinet, pouring herself a glass of my vodka without asking. "We need to talk about boundaries, Richard," she said, taking a sip and grimacing as the alcohol hit her throat. "You cannot just lock us out of our own lives. It is abusive. It is controlling. And frankly, it is a little bit senile." I did not offer them a seat. I did not offer them a towel. I stood by the fireplace where I had set up a connection between my laptop and the 85-inch television screen mounted above the mantel. The screen was black, waiting for my command. Brandon slumped onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "Dad, please," he mumbled into his palms. "Can we just stop fighting? I will pay you back for the flight. I promise. Just turn the cards back on. We have bills due tomorrow." I looked at my son. He was 32 years old, yet he spoke about bills as if they were monsters that appeared under his bed, monsters that only I could chase away. He had no concept of where the money came from to pay those bills. He only knew the magic of the swipe. "I am glad you mentioned paying me back, Brandon," I said, my voice calm, almost monotone. "Because before we discuss turning anything back on, we need to review the return on investment." I tapped the enter key on my laptop. The giant screen flickered to life. It was not a movie. It was not a slideshow of family photos. It was a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. The background was stark white, the grid lines sharp and unforgiving. The font was size 20 bold, so there would be no squinting, no misunderstanding. I had spent the last 24 hours compiling this. It was a forensic accounting of their existence. "What is this?" Vanessa asked, narrowing her eyes at the screen. "This," I replied, "is the cost of your space. This is a ledger of every single transaction made from the family trust and my personal accounts over the last 12 months. I have categorized them for your convenience." I clicked the remote. The first section highlighted in red. It was titled Apparel and Vanity. "Let's look at line item 42, I said, pointing a laser pointer at the screen. October 14th, Hermes Birkin bag, $14,000. Vanessa. Do you remember this day? She rolled her eyes. It is an investment piece, Richard. You do not understand fashion. It retains value. I remember that day I continued ignoring her. That was the day you told me you could not take me to my cardiology appointment because you had a migraine. You left me to take an Uber to the hospital while you were apparently curing your headache at the Hermes boutique on Michigan Avenue. I scrolled down. Line item 58, November 3rd, $3,000. Gucci sneakers for Brandon. Line item 60, November 3rd, same day, $400. A dinner at Nobu. Brandon looked up, his face pale. Dad, that was a business meeting. I was meeting with potential investors for my app. Ah, yes. The app, I said. Let's talk about your business, Brandon. I switched tabs on the spreadsheet. This sheet was titled The Startup Pit. It was a sea of red numbers. Negative signs stretched as far as the eye could see. Here we have the initial seed funding I gave you, $200,000. You told me you were building a revolutionary logistics platform. A chip off the old block, you said. I was so proud. I thought you were finally following in my footsteps. I highlighted a cluster of transactions. But according to these bank records, the logistics platform spent $50,000 on office furniture, Herman Miller chairs, a custom espresso bar, a ping-pong table. And here $20,000 for a launch party before you had even written a single line of code. You have to spend money to make money. Dad, Brandon shouted, standing up. You are old school. You do not get how modern tech works. It is about optics. It is about branding. Branding, I repeated. Is that what this is? I pointed to a transaction from 3 months ago. $75,000. Transfer to CryptoKing_LLC. Brandon went silent. He collapsed back onto the sofa as if his strings had been cut. You told me you needed that money for server costs, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You looked me in the eye at this very table and told me the servers were overheating and you needed to migrate to a cloud cluster. But you didn't buy server space, did you, son? You bought a picture of a monkey. A digital picture of a bored monkey that is now worth less than the coffee Vanessa is drinking. It was a sure thing, Brandon whispered. The market crashed. It was not my fault. It is never your fault, I said. It is the market. It is the economy. It is bad luck. But let's look at the biggest number on this screen. I navigated to the summary tab at the bottom. The total sum was displayed in bold black numbers. It was a 7-figure amount. $1.2 million, I read aloud. That is what you two have burned through in 1 year. That is not a living allowance. That is a lottery win, and what do I have to show for it? A son who lies to me about servers, a daughter-in-law who leaves me at the doctor's office to buy handbags, and a birthday text message asking for space. Vanessa slammed her glass down on the coaster. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. She stood up, smoothing her designer coat, her face twisted in a sneer I had never seen before. She stopped pretending to be the victim. She dropped the mask. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Richard, she spat. You have 10 times that amount sitting in accounts doing nothing. You act like we stole bread from a starving man. You are sitting on a mountain of gold like a dragon, and you are mad that we took a few coins. I stared at her. A few coins. She called $1 million a few coins. We are your family, she continued, walking toward me, her finger pointing at my chest. We are the only reason anyone talks to you. Do you think your old business partners care about you? They are dead or in Florida. We keep you relevant. We look good, so you look good. That money was not wasted. It was the price of admission to having a beautiful young family representing the Caldwell name. You should be thanking us for not putting you in a home yet. The air left the room. Brandon looked at his wife, eyes wide. Even he knew she had gone too far. Vanessa, stop, Brandon hissed. No, let her speak, I said. I want to hear this. So in your mind, this money is my payment to you for what? For existing? For tolerating you. Vanessa screamed. Do you know how exhausting it is to listen to your boring stories about the shipping industry? Do you know how hard it is to pretend to be grateful for every little crumb you throw us? Thank you for the house, Richard. Thank you for the car, Richard. We are sick of saying thank you. We deserve that money. Brandon is your heir. It is his money anyway. You are just holding on to it because you are a control freak who cannot stand the fact that your time is over. She was panting now, her chest heaving. She looked wild. But in her eyes I saw the truth. She truly believed she was right. She believed that my lifetime of 60-hour work weeks, of missed holidays, of stress ulcers and sleepless nights existed solely to fund her delusions of grandeur. I looked at Brandon. He was not defending me. He was watching Vanessa, waiting to see if her gamble would pay off. He was weighing his options. If he sided with her, maybe I would crack. Maybe I would feel guilty and open the checkbook. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. The room plunged back into the dim light of the city evening. You are right, Vanessa, I said softly. She blinked, surprised. I am, yes. I have been using money to control you. I have been using it to force you to spend time with me, to make you call me, to make you visit. I thought that if I provided enough, you would eventually love me back, or at least respect me. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city I had helped build, but I see now that was a bad investment. I poured millions into a venture that has zero return. And as any good businessman knows, when an asset becomes a liability, you liquidate it. I turned back to face them. You mentioned that Brandon is my heir, I said. That is technically true. He is my biological son. But inheritance is not a right, Vanessa. It is a gift, and gifts can be returned. I pulled a folded document from my inside jacket pocket. It was not the eviction notice. Not yet. It was a printout of the amendment I had sent to Leonard earlier that day. This is a draft of the new structure for the Caldwell Family Trust, I said. As of this morning, the beneficiary clauses have been suspended, pending a full psychological and financial competency evaluation of all potential heirs. What does that mean? Brandon asked, his voice trembling. It means, I said, leaning in close, that until you can prove you can generate $1 single of your own, you will not see another penny of mine. The gravy train has not just stopped, Brandon. It has derailed. It has exploded. And you are standing in the wreckage. Vanessa laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. You are bluffing. You would never cut off Tyler. Your precious grandson, you are going to let him starve. I smiled. It was a cold smile. Tyler is the only reason you are not in handcuffs right now for credit card fraud, I said. Tyler's tuition is paid directly to the school. His nanny is paid directly by my office. His food will be delivered by a service I control. You two will not touch a cent intended for him. If you try to use him as leverage, if you try to keep him from me, I will burn your entire world to the ground, with legal fees so high you will be paying them off in your next life. I walked to the door and opened it wide. The 30 minutes are up, I said. Get out. But where do we go? Brandon cried, standing up, but not moving toward the door. We have no cash. You blocked the cards. We cannot even get a hotel. I looked at the Excel spreadsheet one last time, burned into my mind. I suggest you return the Gucci sneakers, Brandon. They should fetch enough for a night at the Motel 6. And Vanessa, that Hermes bag. If it truly retains its value, as you said, you should have no problem selling it to buy some groceries. I pointed to the hallway. Out, now. Before I call the police and show them the transaction history for the crypto transfer. I think the IRS would be very interested in hearing about your business expenses. They scrambled. For the first time in their lives, they moved with urgency. They grabbed their bags and ran out of the apartment as if the floor was on fire. I watched them go. I watched the elevator doors close on their terrified, angry faces. I turned back to the living room. It smelled of her expensive perfume and his fear. I walked to the table and picked up the glass of vodka Vanessa had poured. I walked to the sink and poured it down the drain. Then I sat back down at my laptop. I had one more email to send. It was time to contact the real estate agent. It was time to sell the house they had just been kicked out of. The spreadsheet was closed, but the reckoning was just beginning. Vanessa did not run. She did not cry. My suggestion that she sell her Hermes bag to buy groceries seemed to short-circuit something inside her. She stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, her hand clutching the strap of that $14,000 bag so tightly, her knuckles turned white. For a moment, the only sound in the penthouse was the hum of the refrigerator and the wind howling against the glass 45 stories up. Then she started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was a dry, jagged sound that made the hair on the back of my arms stand up. She turned around slowly, her heels clicking on the hardwood with deliberate, aggressive force. She walked back into the living room, right up to where I was sitting. "You think this is funny, Richard?" she said, her voice dangerously low. "You think treating us like employees you can fire is a lesson. But you are forgetting one very important thing. Employees have rights. And family members have even more." I looked at Brandon. He was still sitting on the edge of the sofa, looking at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. "Brandon," I said, "control your wife. We are done here." Brandon did not move. Vanessa stepped between us, blocking my view of my son. She looked at me with eyes that were no longer the eyes of a daughter-in-law. They were the eyes of a predator looking at wounded prey. He cannot control me, Richard, she spat. And you cannot control us anymore either. You think you are so smart with your spreadsheets and your blocked cards. You think you are the powerful CEO teaching the peasants a lesson. But look at you. You are just a sad, lonely old man sitting in a glass tower waiting to die. I remained calm. I took a sip of my water. I have heard worse things in boardrooms from men much scarier than a former catalog model. Is that all, Vanessa? I asked. Because my dinner reservation is still fictional, but my patience is very real, and it is running out. No, that is not all, she screamed, her voice suddenly spiking, echoing off the high ceilings. You want to talk about facts? Let's talk about facts. Fact number 1. You are 68 years old. Fact number 2. You have been acting erratic lately, blocking cards, locking your family out, talking to yourself, seeing enemies where there are none. She turned to Brandon. Tell him, Brandon. Tell him what we talked about with the doctor in Aspen. I looked at my son. What is she talking about? Brandon. Brandon finally looked up. His eyes were red, but there was no warmth in them. Just a cold, survivalist fear. Dad, he stammered. We are just worried about you. You have been intense. Maybe Vanessa is right. This behavior, this paranoia about the money, it is not normal. It is a sign of decline. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter. They were gaslighting me. In my own home. Decline, I repeated slowly. You think I have dementia because I stopped letting you rob me. It is called financial abuse. Richard, Vanessa interjected, smiling now. A cruel, triumphant smile. And when a senior citizen starts using money to abuse their family, the court takes notice. We have already looked into it. It is called a conservatorship. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. Conservatorship. The legal mechanism designed to protect the incapacitated, now weaponized by the greedy to enslave the elderly. You are threatening to take away my freedom, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We are threatening to take control, Vanessa corrected, walking over to the fireplace and picking up a crystal vase. It was a gift from my late wife, Eleanor. We are going to petition the court. We will tell them you are mentally unstable. We will tell them you are a danger to yourself and your finances. We have the texts, Richard. The texts where you sound angry, irrational. And with Brandon's testimony, no judge will let you keep control of the trust. We will become your guardians. And then we will decide who gets an allowance. She tossed the vase from one hand to the other, testing its weight. So here is the deal, she said. You turn the cards back on. You apologize. You transfer $500,000 into our joint account for pain and suffering. And you sign a document giving Brandon power of attorney. Do that, and we forget this little episode happened. We let you play grandfather. And if I refuse, I asked. Vanessa stopped tossing the vase. She looked at it, then looked at me. Then with a casual flick of her wrist, she let it drop. The sound of the crystal shattering on the marble hearth was louder than a gunshot. Shards of glass exploded outward, glittering under the track lights. One piece slid across the floor and stopped at the toe of my shoe. Oops, she said, her face devoid of emotion. My hand slipped. Just like your mind is slipping. If you refuse, Richard, we will declare war. We will drag you through every court in Illinois. We will expose every skeleton in your closet. We will make sure you end up in a state-run facility where the nurses steal your medication, and we will live in this penthouse while you rot. I looked down at the broken glass. That vase had held roses on my 30th anniversary. Now it was dust, just like my relationship with my son. I looked at Brandon one last time. He was staring at the broken glass, but he did not say a word. He did not tell her to stop. He did not defend his mother's memory. His silence was his signature on her declaration of war. Get out, I said. What? Vanessa laughed. You didn't hear me, I stood up. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall. I may be 68, but I still have the shoulders of a man who worked on the docks before he owned them. I took a step toward them. I said, "Get out." Vanessa took a step back, startled by the sudden shift in my energy. "You have 60 seconds," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "If you are not on the other side of that door in 1 minute, I am calling James, and I am not telling him to escort you out. I am telling him there are intruders in my home who have destroyed property and threatened my life. In Illinois, that gives me the right to use necessary force. Do not test me." Brandon jumped up. "Vanessa, let's go. He is crazy. He might do it. He is bluffing." Vanessa shrieked, though she was backing away toward the foyer. 50 seconds, I counted. "You will regret this," Vanessa screamed, grabbing her bag. "You will never see Tyler again. I will poison him against you. I will tell him you hate him." 40 seconds. They scrambled into the hallway. Brandon tried to grab the handle of his suitcase, but his hands were shaking so bad he dropped it. "Leave it," Vanessa yelled at him. "We are leaving." They ran for the elevator. Vanessa jammed her finger against the call button, repeatedly staring at me with pure hatred. I stood in the doorway of my living room watching them. The elevator doors finally slid open. They practically fell inside. "This is not over, Richard!" Vanessa screamed as the doors began to close. "You just signed your own death warrant." The doors shut. The silence returned. But it was different this time. It was not empty. It was heavy with the debris of a nuclear explosion. I walked over to the fireplace. I knelt down and picked up a large shard of the crystal vase. It cut into my thumb, a small drop of blood welling up. I needed that pain. It told me I was still alive. It told me I was still fighting. I stood up and walked to my desk. I did not look at the view. I did not pour another drink. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had memorized 20 years ago. It rang twice. Caldwell. The voice on the other end was raspy sharp. It was Leonard Roth. He was probably at a steakhouse or perhaps still in his office. Leonard never really slept. "Leonard," I said, "I need you to file a motion first thing in the morning." "What kind of motion?" Leonard asked. He sounded interested. He could smell blood in the water. Everything I said. Restraining orders. Eviction notices for the tenants in the properties I own. And Leonard, yeah. Prepare a defense against a guardianship petition. They are going to try to say I am incompetent. They threaten to take control of the trust. There was a pause on the other end. Then a low, dark chuckle. "They threatened the king in his own castle?" Leonard asked. "Yes," I replied. "They broke Eleanor's vase, Leonard. And they threatened to take Tyler away." The line went quiet for a second. When Leonard spoke again, his voice was no longer casual. It was the voice of a man unholstering a weapon. "I will have the papers ready by 8 a.m., Richard. By noon, they won't just be homeless. They will be uninsurable. Do you want me to go for the jugular? No." "Leonard," I said, looking at the drop of blood on my thumb. "I want you to go for the soul. I want them to wish they had never met me." "Consider it done," Leonard said. "Get some sleep, Richard. Tomorrow we hunt." I hung up the phone. I looked at the spot where the vase used to be. I would not clean it up tonight. I would leave the shards there. A reminder. A memorial. The Richard Caldwell who forgave was dead. The Richard Caldwell who conquered was back, and he had work to do. The process server arrived at 8:45 in the morning. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a retired postman, wearing a windbreaker that was slightly too large for him and holding a thick manila envelope with a bored expression. When I opened the door, he verified my identity with the indifference of a man who destroys lives for $15 an hour. He handed me the envelope, mumbled, "Have a nice day," and walked away before I could even glance at the return address. I stood in the foyer of my penthouse, the heavy paper weighing down my hand. I knew what it was before I opened it. I had served papers like this to business rivals, to negligent contractors, to people who tried to cheat me. I recognized the weight of a lawsuit, but I never expected to see my own name on the receiving end, typed in bold capital letters above the seal of the Cook County Circuit Court. I walked into the kitchen and placed the envelope on the marble island. I used a silver letter opener to slit the top. My hands did not shake. The adrenaline from last night had calcified into a cold, hard resolve. I pulled out the stack of documents. The first page was a petition for emergency temporary guardianship. I read the words, but my brain refused to process them at first. Petitioner Brandon Caldwell. Respondent Richard Caldwell. Alleged incapacitated person. I felt a physical blow to my chest, as if my son had walked into the room and punched me. Incapacitated. The legal term for someone who can no longer think, act, or care for themselves. I turned the page to the affidavit. It was signed by Vanessa, but the words were clearly crafted by a lawyer who knew exactly which buttons to push. The affidavit claimed that I was suffering from sudden onset dementia. It cited my erratic behavior in cutting off financial support as a symptom of paranoia. It twisted my anger from last night into a medical diagnosis. It claimed I had become violent, breaking furniture and threatening the safety of my family. The broken vase. They had used the broken vase. I read paragraph 14. It was the knife in the back. It stated that due to my mental decline, I was at high risk of dissipating the family estate, and therefore an immediate freeze on all assets was necessary to protect the future of the heir. They were not just trying to take the money. They were trying to erase me. They were asking the court to declare me legally dead while I was still breathing, to strip me of my rights, my voice, and my dignity, all so they could keep buying handbags and playing pretend millionaire. I needed to call Leonard. I reached for my phone, but then I stopped. A strange thought occurred to me. A practical thought. I had a prescription waiting at the pharmacy downstairs. It was for my blood pressure. A condition that was surely spiking right now. I needed to pick it up. I needed to do something normal, something routine to prove to myself that I was not the invalid described in these papers. I took my wallet and the elevator down to the lobby. The concierge James nodded at me, but his eyes darted away quickly. Did he know? Had the poison already spread? I walked into the pharmacy attached to the building. The pharmacist, a woman I had known for 10 years, smiled warmly. She had my bag ready. I handed her my credit card, the same black Centurion card that I had used to buy cars to fund charities to pay for Brandon's wedding. She swiped it. A moment of silence. She frowned and swiped it again. She typed something into her register and looked up at me, her smile faltering. "Mr. Caldwell," she said softly, "the machine is giving me an error code. It says pickup card." I felt the blood drain from my face. Pickup card. It is the banking code for a stolen or compromised instrument. It means the bank wants the physical card confiscated. "Try it again," I said, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. "It must be a chip error." She tried it a third time. The machine beeped a harsh rejection tone. "I am so sorry, Richard," she whispered, looking around to see if anyone was watching. "It says refer to issuer." "Do you have another card?" I pulled out my debit card, my backup Visa, my corporate card. One by one, she swiped them. One by one, the machine rejected me. I stood there, a billionaire in a bespoke suit, unable to pay $40 for blood pressure medication. The line behind me was growing. A young man sighed loudly, checking his watch. I could feel the heat rising in my neck. This was not just an inconvenience. This was a public execution of my status. "I do not have any cash on me," I said, staring at the counter. "It is okay, Mr. Caldwell," the pharmacist said, her eyes full of pity. Pity. The one thing I hated more than disrespect. "Take the medicine. You can pay us later. I will put it on a tab." I took the small white bag. I did not say thank you. I could not. My throat was constricted with shame. I walked out of the pharmacy, the bag clutched in my hand like a lifeline. I walked back to the lobby, past James, past the gilded mirrors, and into the elevator. As the doors closed, the rage finally overtook the shock. I pulled out my phone and dialed the private number for my personal banker at Chase. He answered on the first ring, but his tone was not the usual cheerful greeting. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, his voice tight. "I was just about to call you." "Why are my cards declined, Stephen?" I asked, leaning against the elevator wall. "I have $7 million in liquid cash in that checking account. Why am I being treated like a criminal at a drugstore?" "Richard, please understand, this is out of our hands," Stephen stammered. "We received a court order at 9 a.m. sharp, a temporary restraining order on assets. It puts a hold on all accounts under your Social Security number, pending a competency hearing. The court has appointed a temporary guardian ad litem to review your expenditures." "Who?" I asked. "Who is reviewing my money?" "The order lists the petitioner Brandon Caldwell as the temporary conservator regarding day-to-day access," Stephen said. "He has been granted limited access to the accounts to ensure," the document says, "to ensure the maintenance of the estate and dependents." I laughed. A dark, terrifying laugh that made Stephen go silent on the other line. "So let me get this straight," I said. "My son tells a judge I am crazy, and the bank hands him the keys to the vault. Without talking to me, without a trial, it is an ex parte order," Richard Stephen explained. "It means it was granted based on an emergency affidavit without the other party present. They claimed immediate irreparable harm. We have to comply with the judge. Your access is frozen until the hearing next Tuesday. You cannot withdraw cash transfer funds or use credit." "I am so sorry." I hung up the phone. The elevator opened into my penthouse. The silence of the apartment was different now. It was not peaceful. It was a prison. I walked back to the kitchen island and looked at the papers again. I looked at Brandon's signature. It was shaky. He was weak. He could never have done this alone. This had Vanessa's fingerprints all over it. The audacity of it was breathtaking. They used the system I believed in, the law and order I respected, to stage a coup. I went to my safe in the master bedroom closet. I spun the dial left, right, left. The heavy door clicked open. Inside, stacked neatly, were bands of $100 bills. Emergency cash. I counted it. $50,000. It was enough to survive. Enough to pay Leonard. Enough to fight. They thought they had cut off my oxygen. They thought that by freezing the digital numbers they could freeze the man. But they forgot that I was making deals with cash in briefcases before they were born. I sat down on the floor of the closet, holding the stacks of money. I felt a tear run down my cheek. It was not for the frozen accounts. It was not for the humiliation at the pharmacy. It was for the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders at the zoo. The boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I realized then that my son was dead. The Brandon I loved had died the moment he signed that paper. The man who existed now was a stranger, an enemy combatant. I wiped the tear away. I stood up. I put the money in a briefcase. Then I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a dementia patient. I saw a general preparing for war. I walked back to the kitchen and picked up the phone. I dialed Leonard. "Leonard," I said when he answered. "I know," Leonard said. "I just saw the filing. They played the dementia card. It is the nuclear option, Richard. They froze everything, Leonard," I said. "I couldn't buy my heart pills." "I will have the freeze lifted," Leonard said, his voice sharp as a razor. "But we have to play this carefully. If you react with anger, you prove their point. If you yell, you prove their point. You have to be ice, Richard. Absolute ice." "I am not angry, Leonard." I lied. The anger had burned itself out into something much colder. I am just disappointed. We have the hearing on Tuesday, Leonard continued. They will bring doctors. They will bring experts. They are going to try to paint you as King Lear giving away your kingdom and losing your mind. Let them try, I said. Leonard, I want you to hire a private investigator. I want to know who the judge is, I want to know who their lawyer is, and I want you to find the surveillance footage from the building lobby from last night. The footage, Leonard asked. Yes, I said. The affidavit says I was violent. The footage will show I was calm. It will show them attacking the door. It will show them screaming, smart Leonard said. That is the Richard I know. And Leonard, I added. Yes. When we walk into that courtroom on Tuesday, I don't want to just win. I want to expose them. I want the world to see what they did. We will, Leonard promised. I hung up. I looked at the manila envelope one last time. I picked it up and walked to the shredder in my office. I fed the petition into the machine. I watched as the words incapacitated person were sliced into confetti. They wanted a fight. They wanted to prove I was incompetent. I would show them exactly how competent I was. I would show them the difference between a confused old man and a tycoon who was just getting started. I closed my briefcase. The freeze was on. But the fire was just beginning. Leonard Roth's office does not look like a place where justice is served. It looks like a place where enemies are buried. It is located in the basement of a brownstone on the Gold Coast, with no windows and walls lined with books on maritime law and criminal defense. The air always smells of old paper and aggressive cologne. I arrived there at 7 in the morning on Saturday. I brought my briefcase filled with the emergency cash, but Leonard waved it away. He said we would settle the bill after we settled the score. We were not alone. Leonard had brought in a forensic accountant named Sarah. She was a small woman with thick glasses and a laptop that looked like it could launch a missile. We sat around a heavy oak table that was covered in boxes of financial records. Leonard had pulled strings. He had used his connections to get the raw data from the banks before the official freeze locked us out completely. He called it a discovery preemptive strike. I called it an autopsy of my son's life. We started with the credit cards. Sarah projected the spreadsheet onto the wall. It was a kaleidoscope of waste. We went line by line. We saw the dinners. We saw the clothes. We saw the vacations. But Leonard was not interested in the luxury. He was looking for patterns. He was looking for the anomalies that a judge would call dissipation of assets. Focus on the cash withdrawals. Leonard said, leaning back in his chair and lighting a cigar even though it was against building code. Look for round numbers. Look for repetition. Sarah typed furiously. Her fingers moved like spiders across the keyboard. Here, she said, pointing to the screen. Look at this pattern on the joint checking account. Every Friday for the last 2 years, a transfer of $4,500. Then another one on Monday for varying amounts. 6,000, 2,000, sometimes 10,000. I leaned forward, squinting at the projection. The payee was listed as SSS Consulting Group. I looked at Leonard. Do we know a consulting group with those initials? I asked. Brandon told me he hired consultants for his startup. Maybe this is legitimate. Maybe he was actually trying to build the business. Leonard did not answer. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. He put it on speaker. Check the business registry for SSSS Consulting Group, he barked at whoever was on the other end. Nevada Incorporation. Nevada, I whispered. Why would he hire a consultant in Nevada for a tech startup based in Chicago? Sarah continued to dig. She cross-referenced the dates of the transfers with Brandon's calendar, which we had accessed through the family cloud account. Mr. Caldwell, Sarah said, her voice hesitant. On the dates of these large transfers, Brandon's calendar is marked as business trip, West Coast. But looking at the flight logs from his frequent flyer account, he never flew to San Francisco or Silicon Valley. He flew to Las Vegas, every single time. My stomach turned. I felt the bile rise in my throat. Las Vegas. Leonard's phone beeped. He looked at the text message. Just as I thought, Leonard said, blowing a cloud of smoke toward the ceiling. SSS Consulting stands for Silver State Solutions. It is a shell company. It has no employees, no office, just a P.O. box in a strip mall in North Las Vegas. What does that mean? I asked, though. Deep down, I already knew. It means your son is not investing in technology, Richard Leonard said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register. He is washing money. Sarah kept typing. She pulled up a database I had never seen before. It looked like a credit check, but deeper. I am running a background check on the registered agent of Silver State Solutions, she said. His name is Dominic Vanzetti. Leonard let out a dry laugh. Vanzetti. I know him. He is not a consultant. He is a bookie, a high-end loan shark who caters to rich kids who want to play poker with the big boys but don't have the skill or the stomach for it. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the oak table to steady myself. My son. My Brandon. I thought he was just lazy. I thought he was just entitled. I thought he was spoiled by Vanessa and her need for status. But this was different. This was dark. So the $4,500 a week, I asked. Interest, Leonard said. Just the interest. The VIG. That means the principal debt is massive. If he is paying $5,000 a week just to keep the sharks away, he must owe them $500,000, maybe more. I looked at the screen again. The numbers blurred. I saw the transfers, week after week, month after month. Money that I had earned, money that I had transferred to him, thinking it was for mortgage payments or school fees. He had taken my sweat, my labor, and he had fed it into a slot machine or thrown it onto a felt table in a windowless room in Vegas. And the withdrawals on Mondays, I asked, pointing to the erratic numbers. Covering losses, Sarah said softly. Or paying off markers. Then she found something else. Mr. Caldwell, look at this. 6 months ago. A lump sum transfer of $200,000 from the Trust's Emergency Medical Fund. The memo says, Specialist Treatment for Dad. I froze. I remembered that. Brandon had come to me, tears in his eyes, saying there was a new experimental treatment for my heart condition in Switzerland that we needed to prepay to get on the waiting list. I was touched. I thought he cared about my life. I signed the authorization. I never went to Switzerland because he told me the trial was canceled and the money would be refunded. It was never refunded, Sarah said. It went straight to a wire service. Destination, the Bellagio Hotel and Casino. Cage account number 4490. I sat back in my chair. I felt cold. Colder than I had felt in the penthouse. I felt foolish. I felt betrayed in a way that transcended money. He had used my own mortality, my own fear of death to bankroll a gambling binge. He had looked me in the eye, held my hand, and lied to me about saving my life so he could go play baccarat. This is not just incompetence, Leonard said, breaking the silence. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. And more importantly for our case on Tuesday, this proves he is not fit to be a guardian. A man with a gambling addiction cannot be trusted with a checkbook, let alone a multi-million-dollar estate. But Richard Leonard continued leaning forward. You realize what this means, right? I nodded slowly. It means he is desperate. It means he is compromised, Leonard corrected. A man who owes $500,000 to guys like Vanzetti is a dangerous man. He is not just trying to take control of your money because Vanessa wants a new bag. He needs access to the liquid cash to save his legs, or his life. That is why he filed the emergency petition, I realized aloud. He ran out of sources, I cut him off. The credit cards were his lifeline. When I blocked them, the sharks came calling. He needs the conservatorship so he can drain the accounts legally to pay them off. Exactly, Leonard said. He is cornered, and a cornered rat bites. I closed my eyes. I saw Brandon's face. Not the 32-year-old man who yelled at me, but the teenager who used to hide his report card when he got a C. I had always bailed him out. I had always fixed it. If he broke a window, I paid for it. If he crashed a car, I bought a new one. I had taught him that consequences were things that happened to other people. I had created this monster. I had fed it with cash and sheltered it from reality until it grew big enough to try and eat me. We have him, Sarah said, closing the laptop. This paper trail is undeniable. If we present this to the judge, the guardianship petition will be thrown out in 5 minutes. We can prove he has a conflict of interest. We can prove he is misappropriating funds. We can even file criminal charges for the medical fund transfer. That is wire fraud. Criminal charges, I repeated. Prison. Leonard watched me carefully. He knew this was the breaking point. He knew that destroying an enemy is easy, but destroying your own son requires a different kind of soul. Do you want to file charges? Leonard asked. I looked at the stack of papers. I looked at the red numbers that represented my son's betrayal. I thought about Vanessa. I thought about how she must know. She had to know. You don't live with a gambler and not know. She was complicit. She was pushing him to take over my estate because she knew it was the only way out of the hole they had dug together. No charges, I said finally. Not yet. Why? Leonard asked, raising an eyebrow. Because prison is too easy, I said. In prison he gets a bed. He gets food. He gets away from his debts. If I send him to prison, I am still bailing him out. I am still solving his problem. I stood up and walked to the wall where the spreadsheet was projected. I placed my hand on the screen covering the column of transfers. I want him to face the world he created, I said. I want him to stand in that courtroom and hear us read these numbers out loud. I want him to know that I know. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes that his father is not the senile old fool he thinks he is, but the man who can see right through his soul. And the debts, Leonard asked. Vanzetti won't wait. That is not my problem, I said. He wanted space, he wanted independence. Let him handle independent problems. But there is one thing, I added, turning to Sarah. Yes, Mr. Caldwell, the house, I said. The mortgage on his house. Is it paid? Sarah checked the records. No. The payments are 3 months behind. The bank has sent notice of default. Good, I said. Leonard, you said we are selling the debt on the house. Yes, Leonard said. I have a buyer lined up, a holding company known for aggressive foreclosure. Change the plan, I said. I don't want to sell the debt to a stranger. I want to sell it to Vanzetti. Leonard dropped his cigar. He stared at me. You want to sell your son's mortgage to his bookie? It is the perfect synergy, I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. Vanzetti wants his money. Brandon has a house that has equity. If I sell the note to Vanzetti, he becomes Brandon's landlord. He becomes the one knocking on the door. It keeps the violence away from Tyler because Vanzetti won't hurt the golden goose while he has a lien on the coop. But it puts Brandon in a cage with the tiger he tried to feed. Leonard smiled. A slow, terrifying smile. That is diabolical, Richard. It is business, I said. Just business. I gathered my coat. I felt heavy. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a deep, aching sorrow. But the sorrow was quiet. It was resolved. Print everything I said to Sarah. Prepare the exhibits. We are going to court on Tuesday. And we are going to perform surgery. We are going to cut the cancer out of this family, even if it kills the patient. I walked out of the basement office into the morning light. The city was waking up. People were going to brunch. Families were walking in the park. Somewhere Brandon was probably waking up in a motel, or maybe sleeping in his car, checking his phone, hoping for a transfer that would never come. He was waiting for his father to save him. But his father was gone. The man walking down the street was just the plaintiff, and the trial was about to begin. I did not go home after leaving the basement office of Leonard Roth. The sun was fully up now, casting long, sharp shadows across the Chicago streets, but I felt none of the warmth. The coldness from the forensic audit was still sitting in my marrow. I got into my car and told my driver to head north toward the suburbs. I did not tell him the specific address, but he knew. He had driven this route 1,000 times. We were going to St. Jude's Academy. It was a Saturday, but Tyler had soccer practice. I knew his schedule better than his parents did. I knew that on Saturdays the practice ran from 9 until 11. I knew that Brandon usually dropped him off late and Vanessa picked him up early, complaining about the drive the entire time. Today I did not want to say hello. I did not want to be the grandfather cheering from the sidelines. Today I was doing reconnaissance. We parked across the street from the playing fields. The engine purred silently, the heater fighting against the chill of the morning. Through the tinted glass of the rear window, I watched the children running in their bright orange jerseys. It was a scene of perfect innocence. The grass was manicured. The parents stood in clusters holding thermoses of coffee, discussing ski trips and board meetings. It was a fortress of privilege, a place where bad things were not supposed to happen. I scanned the crowd for Brandon or Vanessa. They were not there. Typical. They had probably dropped him off and gone to get brunch, leaving him to be watched by the coaches. My eyes found Tyler. He was playing defense, kicking at the dirt, looking smaller than I remembered. He looked lonely. My heart ached for him. He was the only innocent party in this war, and he was the one with the most to lose. Then I saw it. It was subtle. If I had not spent 40 years anticipating strikes from labor unions and competitors, I might have missed it. A gray sedan pulled up to the curb on the far side of the field near the goalpost where Tyler was standing. It was an older model, nondescript, with a dent in the rear bumper. It was the kind of car that disappears in traffic, the kind of car that does not belong parked next to a line of Range Rovers and Porsches. The window rolled down. A man was sitting in the driver's seat. He was wearing sunglasses, even though the angle of the sun did not require them. He was watching the game. No, he was not watching the game. He was watching Tyler. I felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it made my hands shake. I reached for the door handle. I was ready to run across that field, 68 years old or not, and tear that man out of the car. But I stopped. I forced my hand to release the latch. I could not cause a scene. If I ran out there, I would alert the man that he had been made. I would alert the school. And worse, I would alert Brandon that I was watching. I needed to see what happened next. The man lit a cigarette. He let the smoke drift out the window. He checked his watch. Then he held up a phone and took a picture. I stopped breathing. He was photographing my grandson. Tyler turned around. He saw the car. He hesitated. The man in the car waved. A small, friendly wave. Tyler, being a polite boy raised to trust adults, gave a hesitant wave back. The man smiled. I could see the flash of teeth from 50 yards away. Then he put the car in gear and drove away, slowly disappearing into the suburban traffic. It was a message. It was a marker. Vanzetti, or whoever his people were, was establishing proximity. They were telling Brandon that they knew where the weak point was. They knew that a man who owes $500,000 might run, but a father won't run without his son. They were marking the collateral. "Drive," I said to my driver. My voice was a croak. "Where to, sir?" "Follow that gray sedan for 2 blocks, then pull over," I commanded. We watched the gray car turn onto the highway. I memorized the license plate. I did not need to follow him to know where he was going. He was going back to report that the target was acquired. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. The fear had transformed into a cold, lethal rage. I dialed a number I had not used in years. It belonged to a man named Garrett. Garrett ran a private security firm that specialized in executive protection. He was expensive. He was invisible. And he was loyal only to the check signer. Richard Garrett answered on the first ring. It has been a while. I need a detail, Garrett. Level 5. Immediate deployment. Who is the principal? Garrett asked, his tone shifting instantly to business. My grandson, Tyler Caldwell, 8 years old, St. Jude's Academy. Threat assessment high, I said. Organized crime, debt collection. They have established visual contact at his school. I need eyes on him 24/7. I want a shadow detail. Nobody sees you. Not the teachers, not the parents, and especially not his father. Understood, Garrett said. I can have a team on the ground in 30 minutes. 2 operators, 1 static, 1 mobile. We will track him from the school to his home. Do it, I said. And Garrett? Yes. If anyone approaches him, if that gray sedan comes back, I do not want you to call the police. I want you to intercept. We will neutralize the threat, Richard. Do not worry. I hung up. I sat back in the leather seat, closing my eyes. I was spending thousands of dollars a day to protect my grandson from the consequences of his father's sins. I was building a wall around Tyler, but I knew walls were not enough. As long as Brandon owed money to these people, Tyler would be a target. The debt was the magnet, and Brandon was walking around with that magnet in his pocket, oblivious to the fact that he was dragging his son into a minefield. I realized then that I had to accelerate the timeline. I couldn't wait for the court hearing on Tuesday to expose Brandon. I needed to neutralize the debt now. But I couldn't pay it off. If I paid Vanzetti, I would be teaching Brandon that Daddy always fixes it. I would be feeding the addiction. Brandon would just borrow more, knowing I was his safety net. Number 1. I had to change the ownership of the debt. I called Leonard back. He was probably still in his office preparing the exhibits for court. Leonard, I said. Richard, did you forget something? The mortgage, I said. Brandon's house. The one he is 3 months behind on. Yes, Leonard said. The bank is preparing to foreclose. I have the holding company ready to buy the note on Monday. Change the plan, I said. I do not want a holding company. Leonard paused. What do you mean I want you to contact Dominic Vanzetti? There was a silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence. Richard Leonard said slowly. Are you sure you want to reach out to a crime boss? I want you to make him an offer he cannot refuse, I said. I want to sell him the mortgage note on Brandon's house. I will sell it to him at a discount, 50 cents on the dollar. Richard, that is insane, Leonard whispered. You are handing the deed to your son's house to the man who wants to break his legs. Exactly, I said. Think about it, Leonard. Right now, Vanzetti has no leverage except violence. He is threatening Tyler to make Brandon pay. But Brandon has no money. Violence is useless if the debtor is broke. But if Vanzetti owns the mortgage, Leonard interrupted, catching on. He has a legal asset. He can foreclose. He can seize the property. And more importantly, I continued looking out the window at the school where my grandson was playing. If Vanzetti owns the house, he won't burn it down. He won't hurt the family living inside because they are effectively paying him rent. It shifts his focus from breaking legs to collecting assets. It buys Tyler safety. It is a deal with the devil, Richard Leonard said. I know, I replied. But right now, the devil is the only one who can control Brandon. Brandon won't listen to me. He thinks I am a senile old man. But he will listen to Vanzetti. When Vanzetti shows up on his doorstep, not as a loan shark, but as his landlord, Brandon will finally understand the reality of his situation. I want it done today, Leonard. Use a shell company if you have to. But get that paper into Vanzetti's hands before Monday. I will make the call, Leonard said. But Richard. Yes, if we do this, there is no going back. You are throwing your son into the wolf's den. He is already in the den, Leonard said. I am just changing the lock on the door so he cannot drag his son in there with him. I ended the call. I watched the soccer practice end. I saw Brandon's car pull up late, screeching to the curb. I saw him run out looking disheveled, checking his phone nervously. He grabbed Tyler by the arm a little too roughly and hurried him into the car. He didn't look at the field. He didn't ask how the game was. He was looking over his shoulder. He knew he was being watched. He just didn't know who was watching him. He thought it was just the criminals. He didn't realize that his father was watching too. And his father was about to unleash a much bigger monster to save the boy in the back seat. I signaled my driver. Take me home. I need to prepare for court. As we drove away, I saw a black SUV pull out of a side street and slip into traffic behind Brandon's car. It was Garrett's team. The shield was in place. Tyler was safe for now. But Brandon was about to find out that the only thing worse than owing money to a shark is living in a house owned by one. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. It was Tuesday morning and the Cook County Courthouse was bustling with people whose lives were falling apart, but inside courtroom 4B the silence was absolute. I sat at the defendant's table next to Leonard Roth. I wore my charcoal suit, the one I usually reserved for board meetings, where I had to fire someone. Today, I felt like I was the one being fired from my own life. Across the aisle, Brandon and Vanessa sat with their lawyer, a man named Sterling. Sterling was a shark in a pinstripe suit, the kind of lawyer who smiled with his mouth, but never with his eyes. Brandon looked pale, staring at his hands, which were clasped tightly on the table. Vanessa, however, looked ready for her close-up. She was wearing a modest navy dress, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, no jewelry. She was playing the role of the concerned, grieving daughter-in-law to perfection. She dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue every time the judge looked in her direction. The judge, an older woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, tapped her gavel. She looked tired. She had probably seen 1,000 families like ours fighting over money while pretending it was about love. Mr. Sterling stood up. He buttoned his jacket and walked toward the bench with a confident stride. He did not look at me. He spoke to the judge as if they were sharing a sad secret. Your Honor. He began, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. We are not here today out of greed. We are here out of necessity. The petitioner, Mr. Brandon Caldwell, loves his father deeply. It breaks his heart to drag this matter into the public eye. But when a man of Mr. Richard Caldwell's age begins to exhibit dangerous, erratic behavior, it is the duty of the family to step in. He turned and finally pointed a finger at me. This is a man who overnight cut off all financial support to his only child and his 8-year-old grandson. He locked them out of their home in the middle of winter. He canceled their health insurance. He froze their transportation. These are not the actions of a rational father. These are the actions of a mind in steep decline, a mind gripped by paranoia and persecution mania. I sat stone still. I wanted to stand up and shout that I cut them off because they were parasites. But Leonard's hand was resting firmly on my arm, anchoring me to the chair. Be ice, he had said. Be ice. Sterling continued pacing back and forth. We have submitted affidavits from Mrs. Vanessa Caldwell, detailing outbursts of rage, breaking furniture, screaming at invisible enemies, hoarding cash in his bedroom closet like a survivalist. Your Honor. Richard Caldwell sits on an estate worth millions, yet he denies his family the basic necessities of life. We are asking the court to grant temporary emergency guardianship to his son Brandon, not to take the money, but to manage it, to ensure that the estate is not squandered by a man who no longer understands the value of $1. He sat down. Vanessa let out a small, audible sob. It was a masterful performance. If I didn't know her, I would have believed her. The judge looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Roth," she said. "Your response," Leonard stood up. He did not walk around. He did not use flowery language. He picked up a single file folder and walked to the podium. "Your Honor," Leonard said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Mr. Sterling tells a very compelling story about a senile old man hoarding gold. But we are not here to tell stories. We are here to do math." "Math?" the judge asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, Your Honor. Math. Specifically the arithmetic of subtraction." Leonard opened the folder. "The petitioners claim that my client is paranoid. They claim he imagines enemies where there are none. They claim his decision to freeze their access to his funds was an act of madness. We are here to prove that it was in fact an act of rescue." "Rescue," Sterling scoffed from his table. He cut off their credit cards. "How is that a rescue?" Leonard ignored him. He pulled out a document and placed it on the overhead projector. It was the spreadsheet from the forensic audit. The same red numbers I had stared at in the basement. "Your Honor," Leonard said, "this is a record of transfers from Mr. Brandon Caldwell's personal accounts over the last 18 months. I would like to direct the court's attention to the recurring payments made to an entity known as Silver State Solutions, based in North Las Vegas, Nevada." I watched Brandon. At the mention of the name, his head snapped up. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. He grabbed Sterling's arm and whispered something frantically. Sterling stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. Relevance, we are here to discuss Richard's competency, not Brandon's vacation expenses. It goes to the heart of the matter." "Your Honor," Leonard countered smoothly, "if the petitioner is financially compromised, he cannot serve as a guardian. And if the respondent, my client, acted to prevent his money from funding criminal activity, then he is not senile. He is prudent." "Overruled," the judge said. "Continue, Mr. Roth." Leonard nodded. "Thank you. We did a background check on Silver State Solutions. It is not a vendor. It is not a consultancy. It is a shell corporation registered to a Mr. Dominic Vanzetti." The name hung in the air. Vanzetti. Even in a Chicago courtroom, that name carried weight. It smelled of cigar smoke and broken kneecaps. Brandon sank lower in his chair. He looked like he wanted to slide under the table and disappear. Vanessa stopped crying. She was staring at Brandon with a look of pure horror. She knew about the spending, but she clearly did not know about the name attached to the debt. "Mr. Vanzetti is a known figure in the world of unlicensed lending," Leonard continued. "And according to these records, Mr. Brandon Caldwell has transferred over $200,000 to him in the last year alone. And yet the principal debt remains unpaid." Leonard turned to look at Brandon. "Mr. Sterling called my client paranoid," Leonard said. "But is it paranoia when there are wolves at the door? Is it dementia when a father realizes that every dollar he gives his son is being fed directly into the pockets of organized crime?" Sterling was stunned. He looked at his client, waiting for an explanation, but Brandon was shaking his head, muttering, "No, no." "Your Honor," Leonard said, his voice rising, "the petitioners are asking for control of the Caldwell estate. They claim they want to protect it. But if you grant this guardianship, you are not handing the keys to Brandon Caldwell. You are handing them to Dominic Vanzetti. You are effectively using this court to launder a gambling debt." The judge turned her gaze to Brandon. It was no longer the look of a tired bureaucrat. It was the look of a mother who had just caught a child playing with matches in a gas station. "Mr. Caldwell," the judge asked Brandon directly, "is this true? Do you owe money to this individual?" Brandon tried to stand up. His legs were shaky. "Your Honor, it was an investment. The market turned." Sit down, the judge barked. She turned to me. Mr. Richard Caldwell, you may speak. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked at my son. I saw the terror in his eyes. It was not the terror of losing the case. It was the terror of a man who knows his protection is gone. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I did not cut my son off because I hate him. I cut him off because I love him. For 10 years I have been an enabler. I thought money could fix his mistakes. But when I saw where the money was going, I realized I was not helping him live. I was helping him dig his own grave. I paused, looking at Vanessa. They say I am incompetent, but I was competent enough to hire a forensic accountant. I was competent enough to track the funds. And I am competent enough to know that if I give them access to my accounts today, my life's work will be gone in a month, and my grandson will be left with nothing but his father's debts. I took a breath. I am not asking for pity, Your Honor. I am asking for the right to stop funding my own destruction. And I am asking you to deny this petition so that I can deal with my son's creditors in my own way. The courtroom was silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop humming. The judge looked at the papers. She looked at the spreadsheet Leonard had presented. She looked at Brandon, who was now weeping openly into his hands. Petition denied, the judge said, slamming the gavel down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. She continued. The court finds absolutely no evidence of incapacity on the part of Richard Caldwell. Furthermore, I am ordering the immediate unfreezing of all assets. And Mr. Sterling, yes, Your Honor, Sterling squeaked. I suggest you advise your clients that filing a frivolous guardianship petition to cover up gambling debts borders on perjury. If I see this family in my court again, someone is going to jail. She stood up and walked out. Sterling started packing his briefcase furiously, not looking at Brandon or Vanessa. Brandon sat there, destroyed. Vanessa was frozen, her face a mask of shock. I walked over to their table. Leonard tried to stop me, but I waved him off. I stood in front of my son. Dad, Brandon whispered. I can explain. Don't I said. Vanzetti knows. Brandon looked up, his eyes wide. He knows. He knows you don't have the money, I said. And now he knows you don't have the guardianship. You are useless to him, Brandon. Please, Dad. Brandon begged, grabbing my sleeve. Help me. They will hurt me. They threatened Tyler. I pulled my arm away. I know, I said. That is why I handled it. Handled it. How that is for me to know, I said, cold. You wanted to be independent. You wanted space. Well, the judge just gave you all the space in the world. Enjoy it. I turned and walked out of the courtroom. Leonard was waiting for me by the door, a small smile on his face. That went well, Leonard said. It is not over, I said, pushing the heavy doors open. We exposed the wound. Now we have to cauterize it. Is the real estate agent ready? Yes, Leonard said. Good, I said. Because now that Brandon knows he is broke, he is going to run home to hide. And I want to make sure that when he gets there, he realizes he doesn't have a home to hide in anymore. The heavy oak doors of the courtroom swung shut behind us, muting the buzz of the legal clerks and the shuffling of feet. The hallway was vast and echoed with the sound of my own footsteps. I walked with a purpose, staring straight ahead at the exit signs that glowed a faint electric red. I wanted to reach the fresh air. I wanted to wash the smell of betrayal off my skin. But I knew they were following me. I could hear the frantic clicking of Vanessa's heels on the marble floor, a staccato rhythm of panic. I could hear Brandon's heavy breathing, the sound of a man who had just run a marathon without moving an inch. Richard, wait, Vanessa called out. Her voice had lost its polished theatrical edge. It was raw now. It was the voice of a woman who had checked her reflection in the mirror and saw cracks appearing in the glass. I did not stop. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the courthouse steps. The Chicago wind hit me like a physical blow, biting and cold, but it felt clean. It felt honest. I buttoned my coat and signaled for my driver, Thomas, who was parked at the curb in the black sedan. "Dad, please." Brandon grabbed my arm. His grip was weak, trembling. I stopped and looked down at his hand on my sleeve. He released me instantly as if he had touched a hot stove. "We need to talk," Brandon stammered. His eyes were dartings round, scanning the street, looking for the threats I had told him about. Looking for the sharks. "You cannot just leave us like this." The judge, she didn't understand. "The judge understood perfectly, Brandon," I said, keeping my voice low so the passers-by wouldn't hear. "She understood that you tried to steal from me to pay for your mistakes. She understood that you are not a victim." "But we have no money," Vanessa screamed, stepping in front of me. She was shivering in the cold, her arms wrapped around herself. Her navy dress, so perfect for the courtroom, offered no protection against the reality of the street. "You froze the accounts, you blocked the cards, and now you humiliated us in there. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted?" "To see your son begging," I looked at her. I looked at the way she stood still, defiant, still trying to bully me into submission. "I do not want him begging, Vanessa," I said calmly. "I want him learning." "We are going home," she snapped. "We are going home and we are going to figure this out. We will sell the furniture. We will sell the jewelry. We will find a lawyer who isn't an idiot like Sterling, but we are going home. At least we still have a roof over our heads. You couldn't take that away." She turned to Brandon. "Come on. Let's get a taxi. We will bill it to the house account." I watched them turn away. I watched them take 2 steps toward the taxi stand. And for a split second, I felt a pang of pity. Not for them, but for the memory of what they used to be. I remembered the day I bought that house for them. It was a colonial in the suburbs with a big yard for Tyler and a library for Brandon. I remembered handing them the keys, thinking I was giving them a foundation. I didn't realize I was just giving them a bigger stage for their dysfunction. "Brandon," I said. He stopped. He turned around, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He thought I was going to relent. He thought I was going to reach into my pocket and pull out a credit card. "You aren't going home," I said. What he asked, confused. "You don't have a home," I said. Vanessa laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous bark. "Oh, stop it, Richard. We know the deed is in the trust. But we live there. We have residency. You cannot kick us out without a 30-day notice. We just established that with the doorman. We are going home." I put my hand in my inside pocket. I pulled out a single folded piece of paper. It was not a check. It was a bill of sale. "You are right, Vanessa," I said, unfolding the paper slowly. The deed was in the trust. Specifically, it was held by a limited liability company called Caldwell Real Estate Holdings. I was the sole managing member of that company. Was Brandon asked, his voice barely a whisper. Was I confirmed? As of 9 a.m. this morning, right before we walked into that courtroom, I liquidated Caldwell Real Estate Holdings. I sold the entire portfolio. The company that owned your house no longer belongs to me. Vanessa's face went gray. "You sold the house? You sold the house while we were in court." "I didn't sell the house," I corrected her. "I sold the company that owns the house. It is a corporate transfer. It is immediate. And the new owner is very eager to inspect his acquisition." "Who?" Brandon choked out. "Who did you sell it to?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because at that exact moment, a car pulled up to the curb behind my sedan. It was not a taxi. It was a matte black SUV with tinted windows so dark they looked like oil slicks. The engine idled with a low, menacing rumble. The back door opened. A man stepped out. He was not wearing a suit like Sterling. He was wearing a long cashmere coat over a tailored pinstripe vest. He was tall, with silver hair slicked back and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He held a leather portfolio in his hand. Brandon gasped. He took a step back, bumping into Vanessa. He knew who this man was. Or rather, he knew who this man represented. "Mr. Caldwell," the man said. His voice was smooth-cultured, but it carried an undertone of absolute authority. I nodded to him. "Mr. Thorne." Marcus Thorne. He was a corporate liquidator, a man known in the city as the evictor. He didn't work for banks. He worked for private equity firms. He worked for people who wanted assets seized quickly, quietly, and without mercy. And today, he was working for the holding company that I had set up to transfer the debt to Dominic Vanzetti. Brandon stared at Marcus Thorne with terror. He recognized the name. Thorne was the man who had stripped the assets of Brandon's failing startup 2 years ago. "What is he doing here?" Brandon whispered. Mr. Thorne turned his gaze to Brandon. It was a look of complete indifference. He opened his portfolio and pulled out a document stamped with red ink. "Mr. Brandon Caldwell, Mrs. Vanessa Caldwell," Thorne said. "I am the new managing director of the property located at 442 Oakwood Drive. This is a notice to quit." "Notice to quit," Vanessa shrieked. "You have to give us 30 days. We have rights." Thorne smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "Under normal circumstances, yes. However, looking at the lease agreement you signed with the previous owner." He glanced at me. "It appears you were tenants at will. You paid 0 rent. Therefore, you have 0 protections. Furthermore, the property has been reclassified as a commercial asset to be liquidated for debt recovery." "Debt recovery?" Vanessa asked, looking at Brandon. "What debt?" Thorne handed the paper to Brandon. Brandon took it with shaking hands. He looked at the letterhead. "Vanzetti Global Holdings." Brandon read aloud. He looked up at me. His eyes were filled with tears of betrayal. "Dad, you sold us to Vanzetti." "I didn't sell you, Brandon," I said cold. "I introduced you. You borrowed money from his associates. You promised to pay them back. I just gave them the collateral you forgot to offer." "This is a death sentence," Brandon cried. "He is going to kill us." Thorne stepped forward, invading Brandon's personal space. "Mr. Vanzetti is a businessman, Mr. Caldwell. He does not want to hurt you. He wants his money, and now that he owns your house, he feels much more secure. He knows where you sleep. He knows where your assets are." Thorne paused, letting the implications sink in. "However," Thorne continued, "Mr. Vanzetti has immediate plans for the property. He intends to flip it, which means it must be vacant by sunset." "Sunset," Vanessa screamed. "That is in 5 hours. We have furniture. We have clothes. We have a child." Thorne checked his watch. 4 hours and 45 minutes, actually. "My team is already on site. They are cataloging the contents of the house to see what can be auctioned off to cover the back rent you never paid." "Auctioned." Vanessa lunged at him, clawing at the air. "You cannot sell my things, my bags, my jewelry." Thorne didn't flinch. "Anything left in the house at 5 p.m. is considered abandoned property, Mrs. Caldwell. If I were you, I would stop screaming and start packing." He turned back to his SUV. The driver opened the door for him. Before he got in, Thorne looked at me. "Pleasure doing business with you, Richard. The transfer is complete. The problem is now ours." "Thank you, Marcus," I said. The black SUV sped off, merging into the Chicago traffic. Brandon and Vanessa stood on the sidewalk, stunned into silence. They looked small. They looked like children who had wandered too far from home and suddenly realized the woods were full of wolves. Brandon turned to me. He fell to his knees, right there on the dirty concrete. "Dad, please. I am begging you. Do not let them take the house. Tyler's room is there. All his toys. All our memories. You cannot let Vanzetti have it. He will destroy it." I looked down at my son. Memories don't pay the mortgage, Brandon, I said. And neither do memories pay off bookies. But where will we go? He sobbed. We have no money. We have no cards. And now we have no house. We are homeless, Dad. You made your own son homeless. I signaled to Thomas. The engine of my car purred to life. I didn't make you homeless, I said, opening the car door. I made you free. You wanted independence. You wanted to be your own man. Well, a man figures out where to sleep. A man figures out how to protect his family. I sat in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. The leather was warm and soft. I looked out at them one last time. Vanessa was trying to pull Brandon to his feet, but he was dead weight. She was looking at her phone, probably realizing she had no one left to call. Her friends were fair weather. Her family was broke. They were alone. You are a monster, Vanessa screamed at the closed window. A monster! I tapped the glass. She stopped screaming. I pointed to my wrist, tapping my watch. 4 hours and 40 minutes, I mouthed. Thomas pulled the car away from the curb. I watched them in the rearview mirror until they were just specks in the distance, two figures huddled against the wind, realizing that the castle they lived in was made of sand, and the tide had finally come in. I sat back and closed my eyes. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and stinging. It broke my heart to do it. It broke me into a million pieces to see my son on his knees. But I knew that if I picked him up, he would never learn to stand. I had to let him fall. I had to let him hit the bottom. Because only at the bottom, when you have nothing left to lose, do you finally find out who you really are. Thomas, I said quietly. Yes, sir. Take me to St. Jude's Academy. I need to pick up my grandson. Sir Thomas asked, confused. Usually Mrs. Caldwell picks him up on Tuesdays. Not today, Thomas, I said, looking at the city skyline passing by. Mrs. Caldwell is busy moving. Today Tyler is coming home with me. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Garrett, the head of my security team. The message was simple. Asset secure. Moving to extraction. Ensure the house is clear of hostiles files by 5 p.m. I put the phone away. The war for the money was over. The war for the soul of my family had just begun, and I intended to win. I arrived at the house on Oakwood Drive just as the sun was beginning to set. The sky was a bruised purple, casting long, distorted shadows across the neighborhood. I had dropped Tyler off at my secure safe house with the nanny and the security detail. He was safe. He was eating pizza and playing video games, blissfully unaware that his entire world was being dismantled piece by piece. I needed him to be far away for this. I needed to witness it alone. When my car turned the corner, the first thing I saw was the lawn. It used to be pristine, a manicured carpet of green that I paid a landscaping crew $2,000 a month to maintain. Now it looked like a graveyard of materialism. The liquidation crew from Vanzetti's holding company had been efficient. They were not movers. They were not careful. They were emptying a commercial asset. My son's life was scattered across the grass. The leather sofa where he played video games instead of looking for a job sat crookedly on the curb. The 60-inch television was face down in the dirt. Vanessa's vanity table, the one with the gold leaf trim, was overturned, her expensive creams and perfumes spilling out onto the pavement like broken eggs. It was a scene of absolute chaotic violence, but it was silent. The neighbors were watching from behind their curtains, terrified to step outside. A taxi screeched to a halt in front of the driveway. Brandon and Vanessa tumbled out. They had finally made it back from the city. I lowered my car window to hear the audio of their destruction. No, Vanessa screamed. It was a primal sound. She ran toward the pile of clothes on the driveway. It was her wardrobe. Her designer coats, her silk dresses, her limited edition shoes, all heaped together like trash ready for the incinerator. She grabbed a fur coat, clutching it to her chest, dirt smearing the white lining. Stop it! Stop touching my things! She shrieked at a large man carrying her jewelry armoire. The man didn't even look at her. He walked past her and dumped the armoire onto the grass. The drawers slid open and empty velvet boxes spilled out. The jewelry was already gone, seized as liquid assets. Brandon stood in the middle of the driveway, spinning in circles. He looked at his golf clubs leaning against the mailbox. He looked at his espresso machine, sitting in a puddle of mud. He looked like a man waking up in a nightmare. "Where are the police?" Brandon yelled, his voice cracking. "Someone call the police, this is looting." I stepped out of my car. Brandon saw me. He froze. "Dad," he whispered. "Make them stop, please. This is our home." "It is not your home, Brandon," I said, walking up the driveway. "It is a foreclosed property, and these men are just doing their job." Vanessa looked up from her pile of clothes. Her makeup was ruined. Her hair was wild. She looked at me with pure venom. "You did this," she hissed. "You are the devil." I ignored her. I turned to look at the black sedan parked behind the moving trucks. Two women in business suits stepped out. They wore badges on lanyards. One of them held a clipboard. I had called them an hour ago. I had reported an emergency situation, a homeless family, with significant debt involving organized crime, creating an unsafe environment for a minor. Brandon saw the badges. He saw the logo on the side of their car. Department of Children and Family Services. "No," Brandon breathed. "No, no, no." The caseworker, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable, approached them. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell," she asked. Brandon nodded, too terrified to speak. "We received a report regarding the welfare of your son, Tyler Caldwell," Mrs. Gable said. "We have been informed that you have been evicted from your residence and currently have no fixed address. We have also been informed of credible threats against the family involving criminal debt." "That is a lie," Vanessa screamed, standing up. "We have a home, it is right here, ma'am," Mrs. Gable said, looking at the furniture on the lawn. "This residence is being seized. You are effectively homeless as of this evening. And given the financial instability and the reported danger, the state is intervening to ensure the safety of the child." "Where is my son?" Brandon asked, panic rising in his voice. "Where is Tyler? Tyler is currently in the emergency custody of his grandfather, Mr. Richard Caldwell," Mrs. Gable said, gesturing toward me. "He has been granted temporary guardianship, pending a full investigation into your living situation. You cannot take him." Vanessa lunged toward the caseworker, but Brandon grabbed her, holding her back. He knew that if she touched a government official, it was over. "You set this up," Vanessa spat at me, tears streaming down her face mixed with dirt. "You stole our house and now you are stealing our child." I stepped closer to them. I wanted them to hear me clearly. "I did not steal him, Vanessa. I saved him. Look at you. You are standing in the street with nothing. You have no money. You have no roof. And you owe $500,000 to people who break bones for a living. Do you really think you can take care of an 8-year-old boy tonight? Where will he sleep? On a park bench, in a shelter?" Brandon slumped his shoulders. He looked at the house now, dark and empty, the front door hanging open like a gaping mouth. He looked at his wife clutching a dirty fur coat, and finally he looked at me. "Take care of him, Dad," Brandon whispered. "I will," I said. "Better than you did." Mrs. Gable handed Brandon a stack of papers. "These are the hearing dates," she said. "If you can prove you have stable housing and income within 90 days, you can petition for visitation. Until then, you are to have no contact with the child." 90 days, I thought. They wouldn't last a week. The liquidation crew finished their work. One of the men locked the front door and placed a heavy padlock on the latch. He handed the key to me, then remembered I wasn't the owner anymore. He put the key in his pocket. The trucks rumbled to life. Mrs. Gable got back into her sedan. Silence descended on the street, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling the plastic wrap on the discarded furniture. I turned to go back to my car. Dad, Brandon called out. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. Do you have $20, he asked. Just for food, I closed my eyes. It was the most painful question I had ever heard. My son, the heir to the Caldwell empire, begging for $20. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a $20 bill. I dropped it on the ground. I didn't hand it to him. I dropped it. Use it wisely, I said. It is the last one you will ever get. I got into my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Brandon kneel down to pick up the bill. Vanessa was screaming at the empty house. They were alone in the ruins of their own making. I had cut the cord. The pain was excruciating, but the patient my grandson was going to live. The neon sign of the diner flickered with a buzzing sound that seemed to match the headache I knew my son was suffering from. I found them in a booth near the back. It was the kind of place where the menu is sticky and the coffee tastes like burnt rubber. A fitting setting for the end of the world. Brandon was staring at a plate of cold fries that he had not touched. He looked hollow. The arrogance that had defined him for the last decade was gone, replaced by the terrified slouch of a man who realizes he is small in a very large, very dangerous world. Vanessa was sitting opposite him. She was not eating. She was furiously typing on her phone, her thumbs moving in a blur, likely trying to find a friend who had not yet blocked her number, or an ex-boyfriend who might have a spare room. I walked over to their table. I did not sit down. I did not take off my coat. I stood there like a judgment. Brandon looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot. "Dad," he whispered. The word came out like a prayer. I placed a thick leather folder on the table between the ketchup bottle and the napkin dispenser. The sound of it hitting the laminate surface made Vanessa jump. She looked up, and for a second I saw relief wash over her face. She thought it was a checkbook. She thought the rescue squad had arrived. "I told you he would come," Vanessa said to Brandon, a smirk touching her lips. She straightened her posture, smoothing her dirty coat. "So, Richard, did you bring the keys to a new apartment? Or are we staying at a hotel tonight?" I ignored her. I looked only at my son. "I have a proposition, Brandon," I said. "It is a one-time offer. It expires when I walk out that door." Brandon nodded eagerly. "Anything, Dad." "Please. I cannot go to prison. I cannot deal with Vanzetti." I opened the folder. Inside was a single document. "Here is the deal," I said, my voice low and steady. "I have spoken to an associate who specializes in debt negotiation. I am willing to pay off the principal amount you owe to Dominic Vanzetti. Every cent. The threat to your life will be removed. The threat to your legs will be gone. You will be at zero." Brandon let out a sob of relief. He covered his face with his hands. "Thank you, God. Thank you, Dad." Vanessa reached for the folder, her eyes gleaming. "And the house, do we get the house back?" I pulled the folder away from her reach. "I am not finished," I said. "In addition to the debt, I will fully fund Tyler's life. Private school, university, medical travel. He will want for nothing. He will live with me. I will raise him. And us." Vanessa asked, her voice sharpening. "Where do we live? There is no US, Vanessa," I said, cold. I looked at Brandon. "There are conditions, Brandon. Condition number 1. You sign full permanent legal custody of Tyler over to me. You will have visitation rights, but you will not have decision-making power. I will not let you gamble his future away again." Brandon hesitated, but he nodded. I can't provide for him right now anyway. He is safer with you." "Good," I said. "Condition number 2. I pointed to the papers. "You file for divorce, immediately." The silence in the diner was absolute. Even the cook frying burgers in the back seemed to stop moving. Brandon stared at me, his mouth open. What he whispered. You divorce her, I said, pointing a finger at Vanessa. You cut her loose. You sign the papers tonight. If you do that, I pay the debt. I save you. If you don't, I walk away. You stay married. You keep the debt, and you figure out how to explain to Vanzetti why you don't have his money. That is insane, Vanessa shrieked. She stood up, knocking over the salt shaker. You cannot do that. You cannot buy his marriage. I am not buying it, Vanessa, I said calmly. I am paying for its disposal. You are the cancer that ate his ambition. You are the one who pushed him to spend money he didn't have. You are the one who demanded a lifestyle that required crime to maintain. I am saving him from the source of the infection. Brandon looked at Vanessa. He looked at her with a mixture of love and confusion. He was waiting for her to fight for him. He was waiting for her to grab his hand and say that they didn't need my money. He was waiting for her to say that they would face the mob and the poverty together because their love was stronger than my checkbook. But Vanessa did not grab his hand. She did not look at him with love. She looked at the folder. She looked at me. Her eyes narrowed. The gears in her head were turning, calculating, assessing. She sat back down slowly. She took a sip of her water. If we divorce, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. What do I get? Brandon froze. He turned his head slowly to look at his wife. What? Brandon asked. I am talking to your father, Brandon, she snapped. Then she turned back to me. You want me gone? Fine. But I have rights. I have been his wife for 10 years. I am used to a certain standard of living. If I sign those papers, if I walk away and let you have your precious son and your spineless boy, I need a settlement. I watched Brandon's face. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. The realization hit him harder than the eviction notice, harder than the threat of the mob. He realized that the woman he had stolen, for the woman he had lied, for the woman he had destroyed his relationship with his father for, was currently negotiating his price tag. Vanessa Brandon choked out. You are asking for money to leave me? Don't be naive, Brandon, she said, rolling her eyes. We are broke. You have nothing. Your dad is offering a golden parachute. I would be an idiot not to take it. I am not going to live on the street just to hold your hand while you cry. She looked at me. 500,000, she said. Cash. And I sign. I disappear. I never speak to Tyler or Brandon again. I smiled. It was a sad smile. You just sold your family for $500,000, Vanessa, I said. I am a realist, Richard, she replied. Do we have a deal? I looked at Brandon. He was crying silently. The tears were running down his cheeks, dripping onto the dirty table. He finally saw her. He finally saw the monster I had seen for a decade. No, Brandon whispered. Excuse me, Vanessa asked. No, Brandon said louder. He stood up. He looked at her with disgust. You don't get a payoff. You don't get a cent. He turned to me. I will sign Dad. I will sign the custody papers, and I will sign the divorce papers, not because of the money, but because I never want to see this woman again. He grabbed the pen from the folder. He didn't even read the text. He signed his name with a shaking hand. He signed away his marriage. He signed away his rights. But in doing so, he signed his own freedom. Vanessa's face twisted in rage. You idiot! We could have gotten money out of him. You are worthless. I picked up the folder. The debt is cleared, Brandon, I said. Vanzetti won't touch you. Tyler is safe. I pulled out a small envelope from my pocket. There is $5,000 in here, I said to Brandon. It is for a deposit on a studio apartment and a suit for job interviews. Do not spend it on her. I turned to Vanessa. You get nothing, I said, because you are worth nothing. I turned and walked out of the diner. Behind me, I heard Vanessa screaming. I heard the sound of glass breaking, but I didn't look back. I walked to my car where my driver was waiting. I had saved my son. It cost me a fortune, but as I sat in the quiet of the car, I knew it was the best bargain I had ever made. The fishing line cast a long, thin shadow across the calm water of Lake Michigan. It was quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating silence that filled my penthouse a year ago, but a peaceful, living silence broken only by the sound of water lapping against the dock. Tyler sat next to me, his legs swinging back and forth. He was not looking at an iPad. He was not asking for a new toy. He was watching the red bobber on the water patient, and focused. He had grown 3 inches in 12 months. The shadows under his eyes, the ones caused by the stress of living in a house full of screaming and debt, were gone. He looked like a child again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not jump. I did not feel that old spike of anxiety wondering what crisis I would have to pay for next. I pulled it out slowly. It was a text message from Brandon. There was no request for money, no guilt trip, just a photo. It was a selfie of him wearing a blue polo shirt with a name tag that read trainee. He was standing in the break room of an electronics store in the suburbs. Under the photo he wrote simply, "Got my first commission check today. It is not much, but it covers rent." I stared at the picture. He looked tired. He looked older. But for the first time in his life, he looked real. He was living in a studio apartment the size of my walk-in closet. He took the bus to work. He ate ramen noodles not because it was trendy, but because it was what he could afford. And he was doing it. He was surviving without me. I typed back a short message. "Good work. Keep going." I put the phone away. I heard that Vanessa had moved to Miami looking for another golden ticket, but the word is out on her. Last I heard, she was facing lawsuits from 3 different credit card companies. She is a ghost to us now, a bad memory that is fading with every passing season. People ask me if I regret being so hard on my son. They ask how a father could evict his own child and let him hit rock bottom. I tell them that a gardener who refuses to prune the dead branches will eventually kill the whole tree. I did not punish Brandon. I woke him up. I stopped being his banker so I could one day hopefully be his father again. He is not allowed at the penthouse yet. He has not earned that privilege. But maybe next Christmas, if he keeps paying his own electric bill and showing up to work on time, he will earn a seat at the table. I looked over at Tyler. He felt my gaze and looked up, smiling. "Grandpa, I think I got a bite," he whispered. "Reel it in then," I said softly. "You have to do the work yourself." He nodded and started turning the handle, struggling a little, but refusing to ask for help. I watched him fight the fish, and I realized that this was the legacy. The greatest inheritance I can leave this boy is not the trust fund or the real estate portfolio. It is the lesson that dignity cannot be bought. It must be earned. It is the understanding that a safety net is not a hammock. I took a deep breath of the fresh lake air. The war was over. The family was smaller now, but it was stronger. And for the first time in 69 years, I felt truly rich. Thank you for listening to my story. If you believe that sometimes you have to say no to the people you love in order to save them, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments if you think I should invite Brandon to Christmas dinner this year, or if he needs more time in the real world. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of justice and redemption. See you in the next video.